This module on academic success explores test taking. Tests and exams often play a key role in a student's academic experience. We hope that this module will provide tips and insight into how you can better approach test taking. We'll start off with a brief review of test preparation before moving on to discuss means to prepare your physical and mental self to take a test, and we'll end with practical test-taking strategies. In Orientation to College Learning, Diana Van Blerkum illustrates that test preparation accounts for most of the strategies you want to use when answering test questions. Successful test taking and minimizing the impact of test anxiety are first addressed by shoring up your test preparation strategies. The better you prepare for the test, the more likely you will be to perform well. If your test preparation is thorough enough, you'll know the information and be able to answer each question based on your knowledge. Building up your knowledge of a subject matter will better prepare you for your tests. However, it can also be useful to have a solid test-taking process and plan, strong problem-solving strategies, and what Van Blerkum describes as test-wise clues. Ideally, you'll end up with very few questions that you have to guess in order to answer. While some of the strategies we share in this module may help with some of the test taking, we'd like to emphasize the importance of being well prepared for your tests. Better test preparation will likely lead you to the right answer in the shortest amount of time. Before we explore test-taking tips, let's consider a big-picture approach to test preparation that will position you well for your experience once you enter the exam itself. Strong learning and study habits distributed over the course of each week of the term, engaging in self-testing, and aiming for content mastery and overlearning are all ways in which your study habits can promote strong test preparation. Test preparation also includes taking care of yourself mentally and physically in the weeks and days leading up to the exam. Attending to your physical and mental state requires many things: getting adequate sleep, eating nutritious foods, exercising, and managing stress. Let's start by talking about sleep. Have you ever been in a situation where you got too little sleep and then someone asked you to complete a task or respond to a question? How did you do? Usually, in this kind of sleep-deprived situation, our thinking may not be as honed as we would like, and therefore we will be less likely to recall the answer we want. When we lack sleep, we are usually less alert and have difficulty focusing our attention on what we are reading or studying. When we take a test after getting little sleep, we will be tired and less able to recall the answers in an efficient manner. Gilbert and Weaver claim that the average person requires 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. This is particularly important in the 3 days leading up to the exam itself. We all need to eat food in order to create energy. Kusea, Fakis, and Thompson find that highly nutritious food provides us with the energy that will help us function at maximum capacity and efficiency. The BBC reports that some of the greatest brain foods were the following: nuts, kale, oats and oatmeal, fish and fish oils, proteins, blueberries, tomatoes, broccoli, sage, and peppers. Eating these brain foods will help give you the stamina for a study or for a test in a way a bag of Doritos just can't. When it comes to test day, make sure you eat regular, nutritious meals. Healthy meals will give your brain energy during the test. Aim for protein, fruits and vegetables, and avoid the sugar spikes that come with sweet snacks and drinks. Try not to eat a huge meal right before the test. If you eat a heavy meal before an exam, your body will be focused on the digestion rather than supplying your brain with the blood and oxygen it needs for sharp processing and recall. Regular, rigorous exercise will increase your wellness and improve your mental focus, thus improving the quality of your study times. Kuseo, Fakis, and Thompson find that exercise increases the mental energy and improves mental performance by pumping more oxygen to our brains through increased blood flow. Along with a healthy diet, increased blood flow from participating in an exercise routine has been shown to help relieve stress. In a 2012 Dartmouth study, researchers found that for those who exercise regularly, a morning workout before the exam can help ease tension, decrease anxiety, and increase recall. Those effects, however, were not the case for participants who hadn't been exercising regularly. In short, exercise is helpful, but don't start an exercise routine the day of an exam. There are lots of ways to exercise, so consider adding walking, jogging, or other sort of movement and exercise to your test preparation planning. Stress can contribute to the state of your well-being. Many times, students begin to experience test anxiety because they have allowed stress to build up. There are many tools available to help with stress management. We'd like to offer you 3 main tips to help you manage your stress. The first tip is to adopt a healthy lifestyle by making time for relaxation and stress-relieving activities. Pay attention to what you're eating and drinking. Exercise regularly and sleep the appropriate amount of time. Feeling and living a healthy life will greatly reduce your amount of stress. Our second tip is to focus on the positive. When you focus on the positive, you adapt to the stressor. It allows you to see what's going well and helps you stay motivated and energized to get things done. The third and final tip for stress management is to accept the things you can't change. Many times, stress comes when we try to control the uncontrollable. When we stop doing this and accept what is, we may find that we are able to let go of the stress and are much happier with our situations. For example, when you're in a study group, you won't be able to dictate what others are bringing to the table, but you'll be able to control what you can bring. With both and the second and third tip, you will adopt a positive mindset that will help you get rid of the negative self-talk that may be hindering your success. Brushing off that negativity can vastly improve your happiness as well as your ability to take tests. Before we begin to look at strategies for specific types of tests, we would like to share some general tips for all test taking. These are tips that are adaptable across all exam types. The first suggestion is basic. Read the test directions first. Sometimes, reading the directions can influence whether you pass or fail the exam. Consider how the details of the exam might impact your approach and planning for the test. Will you get points for showing your work? What should you do with your answer? After reading the directions, scan through the whole test so you know what's coming ahead. Take note of the difficulty of the questions so you can decide how long you'll take to answer different questions. This will allow you to budget your time during the test, which is our second suggestion. If you have 1 hour to complete the test, calculate how long you have to complete each question. When calculating, it helps to look at the point values for each test question and decide how many minutes you will allocate to each. For example, you might plan to spend more time on the 4-point questions than the 2-point questions. It is a good practice to budget time to review your answers before you turn in your test. Checking your work allows you to ensure you haven't made any careless errors in your work. With Scantron tests, it might be making sure you've copied your answer selections correctly. For problem-solving tests, it might mean rechecking your calculations. And with essay tests, it might mean rereading your answers for clarity or errors. When approaching the test as a whole, answer the easiest questions first and skip questions if you find yourself stuck. Answering the easiest questions first also helps reduce test anxiety. You'll know that you're doing well on part of the test. Cross off those questions so you know you've answered them. If you get stuck on a question, mark the question and move on. Some students find clues to previous questions in other questions, or find their memory jogged when they continue with the exam. If you choose to skip around between exam questions, make sure to have a way to keep track of your work. We recommend a strategy or process so you know which questions to return to. For instance, I've crossed off the questions I've answered and circled the questions still remaining. Finally, make sure to relax. When you get frustrated by a particularly complicated problem, take a relaxing breath before returning to that problem, or move to another question before returning to the difficult question. Either choice will help give you space to think and to find the best solution. Now that we've shared some general test-taking tips, we will now discuss study strategies you can use when taking specific types of tests, including multiple-choice tests, true-false tests, problem-solving tests, and essay tests. We'll begin with multiple-choice questions. When you encounter a multiple-choice question, read the prompt all the way through. As you read the question, be wary of negatives and extreme words. Words such as not, except, never, no, none, best, worst, all, and every should give you pause. Take mental note if you have an answer come to mind even before you read the possible answers. Then read all the possible answers. Approach it as you might a trivia game with friends. You don't want to answer the question until you know all the variables at play. Sometimes, several of the answers will be good choices. Your job is to choose the best one. In some cases, the answer will be all of the above, and in other cases, the answer will be more specific, such as both A and B are correct. Finding the best answer requires you to be discriminating when analyzing the information. If you have trouble identifying the correct answer, see if you can eliminate some of the incorrect answers in order to narrow down your options. Once you've read the stem of your question, you may be able to see some of the answers that weren't possibilities. Our next set of tips has to do with the true-false test or quiz questions. True-false questions can trip students up if they misread the wording. Take, for example, these 3 samples. All birds can fly. No dinosaurs had feathers. Most snakes are poisonous. In each of these cases, one small word, the qualifier, all, no, or most, makes a difference in the basic statement. The first statement would be false because not all birds can fly. Penguins are birds that don't fly. The second statement would be false because they recently did discover that some dinosaurs had feathers. In both of these instances, you can arrive at an answer by trying to find an exception to the statement. Can you think of a bird that doesn't fly, or information that indicates a dinosaur had feathers? Beware when it comes to qualifiers that are 100% words, such as no, never, none, every, always, all, only, entirely, invariably, and best. The answers will often be false because they imply that there are no exceptions to this rule. Not all examples are so straightforward. In the third statement, most implies that there are more snakes that are poisonous than those that are not. In fact, of the 3,000 different types of snakes, only 250 are actually poisonous. Knowledge of this means the third statement is also false. Another strategy for taking true-false tests is to check each part of the statement. If any of the part of the statement is false, the whole statement is false. Statements with a string of items attached require special attention. Here is an example. Cocoa, a warm climate produce, is grown in the Gold Coast of Africa, Nigeria, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, and southern Norway. Everything in the sentence is true except for the last 2 words. Therefore, the statement is false. If you can't remember information or come up with an answer, it is still worthwhile to guess. With true-false questions, you have a 50% chance of a correct guess, so it is worth the effort to choose one rather than leave it blank. The next type of test we'd like to tackle are the problem-solving tests. Problem-solving tests may still be multiple-choice tests, but they require you to solve problems as part of them. After your instructor hands out the test, but before starting, turn it over and write down the formulas, relationships, and definitions that you need to remember. Note if your professor gives you points for showing your work or partial credit for attempting questions. Also note if the test has ample space for you to show your work or if you have to use scratch paper to show your work. To tackle the more difficult problems, consider the following strategies. First, be sure you understand the problem. Mark keywords and sketch a diagram or picture of the problem. Consider what format the answer will be, a number, an equation. Second, when addressing complex problems, list the formulas you think are relevant to the solution, then decide what you will need in order to get started. Third, if you are unable to find a solution, try writing out an equation to express the relationships among all the givens and unknowns. Fourth, work backwards by asking, what do I need to know to get the answer? Fifth, break the problem into a series of smaller problems and work to find a solution for each of these individual parts. Sixth, guess an answer and then check it. When checking the answer, you may discover a way to find the solution. Seventh, if all else fails, as with all tests, mark the problem and return to it later. You may find clues as you work on other problems that will help lead you to a solution. Finally, we'd like to share essay exam tips. Completing an essay test requires different skills than the previous 3 tests we've spoken about. Preparing for an essay test requires a unique approach to both studying and thinking. If your professor gives you 4 essay questions to study, of which he will choose 2, prepare yourself to answer all 4 questions. However, if you are able to choose what to answer on your essay test, answer the questions you know best. Some students share that they answer the more difficult question because they think the instructor wants that. Ideally, the instructors want you to be able to demonstrate the knowledge you have on the subject area. Thus, it is beneficial for you to show your best thinking. Write what you know. So when completing an essay exam, you'll want to start by establishing a schedule. If there are 6 questions to answer in 60 minutes, you'll want to distribute time for each question and also give yourself time to review. If you allow 7 minutes per question, you'll have roughly 18 minutes to review your essay answers. Read through all of the questions once. Make sure you understand each question. Is it clear? If not, perhaps you can ask for clarification. Some of the questions may inspire your immediate answers. Take note of key words or ideas that come to mind in response to these questions. This strategy will help you to limit or avoid anxiety that might arise if you were to forget what you wanted to address by the time you reach that question to answer. It's important to outline your answers. In this sample question, we answer, how can establishments like Bricks Bank contribute to global social justice? Instructors appreciate answers that are well organized, complete, and clear. Include an introduction and conclusion. The introduction may be a rewording of the question as a statement that contains your main point. Your essay should be able to stand alone. The professor should know what question you're answering without seeing it again. Reread the paper before turning it in. Check for misspelled words. Make sure that sentences and answers are complete. When you find errors, make changes on the test. You will not have time to rewrite your essay, so make the necessary changes and turn it in. Now we'd like you to take a few minutes to think about what you've learned in this module. Think about the next test you have on your schedule. What one idea can you take away from this module to help you prepare for this upcoming test? Thank you for joining us for this module on test taking. We invite you to visit our website at success.oregonstate.edu/learning-corner for more information and study tips.